49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast. We are part of the Odyssey Network. I'm El Sacco. It's a huge game for the 49ers this week. Probably safe to say not as big for their opponent, the Kansas City Chiefs, but it's a marquee matchup nonetheless. And we're going to go behind the enemy lines with the host of The Drive on 96.5 The Fan in Kansas City. He is Carrington Harrison. Carrington, thanks for giving us some time, man.
Hey, absolutely, man. I'm happy to be on with you guys today.
So I got to start, Carrington. The Chiefs have lost some big pieces. No Rashee Rice. They don't have Pacheco, but they just keep winning. The defense has been great, and Mahomes, while he's statistically not having the best year of his career, he's still the great equalizer. Do you think they can sustain this, or are they going to have to go out and make a move on offense to make up for the loss of Rice and maybe bring a receiver in?
It's funny because I would say the answer to your question is probably both. I do think they're going to have to go out and make a move. There's just not a lot of healthy bodies in that room. I mean, as we're talking right now, Juju Smith-Schuster was limited in practice. You have McCole Hardman, Xavier Worthy, Sky Moore, and Justin Watson. You just don't have a lot in that room. But, I mean, the Chiefs over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, where there's a will, there's a way, and they just figure it out. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster got cut from the New England Patriots and had 100 yards receiving. Kareem Hunt was not in the NFL 3 weeks ago and ran for 100 yards last week. So if there's any team in the league that will figure it out, it's Kansas City. I think about this all the time, and you and I both follow the league. Knowing how to win and figuring out how to win is the hardest thing to do in the league. And there is one team that seems to unlock it. It doesn't matter if this game gets played in a shootout. It doesn't matter if this is a low-scoring 13-10 grinded out kind of game. The Chiefs have just shown you that more times than not, they're just going to have more points than you're going to have at the end of the game. So if that means Mahomes has to throw for 400 yards for them to win this game, or their defense is going to have to force 3 turnovers and they win it that way, I just feel confident in almost every situation that whatever adversity is placed before Kansas City, they're going to figure out a way to win.
Are you just waiting for Mahomes to kind of explode? Because I was looking at his numbers, and he has the lowest TD percentage of his career, the highest interception percentage of his career, the lowest QB rating. Just not Mahomes' numbers. He's still, like you said, he finds ways to win. But are you waiting for kind of that game where he just explodes for 350 and 4 TDs, even with the limited weapons?
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point that game happens. But this is the thing that I think we're unfair to quarterbacks in the National Football League, that we want to see guys do it without those weapons. Then when they don't have those weapons, we're like, oh, well, what went wrong? Well, how do you do great things if you don't have great players? Like if you look at the decline of Patrick Mahomes, it's aligned with the pieces around him get worse. I mean, right now the Chiefs are doing a challenge. Patrick, how few weapons can you win the Super Bowl with? Like, think about all the other good teams in the NFL. Think about Detroit. Think about Houston. Think about whatever team that you and I both think are good. All of those teams have noticeably more on offense than Kansas City does. Like, it's not even close right now. The Chiefs' number 1 wide receiver is Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, What are we doing here? That, it just – that's to go to your point. The Chiefs are eventually going to have to make a move. And I think it's going to be hard for Mahomes to kind of have at least consistently those breakout performances that you're alluding to, just because I don't think they have the pieces. Like this offense is just not designed for Mahomes to go crazy in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like it's very dink and dunk and just being creative right now. But like you said, we live with that with Brock Purdy. People want to take away everything he's doing because he has good players around him. But like you said, you need good players to do well. You have to have a good supporting cast. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense to me. We were talking about this on my show. And this is where, again, I just think we pick and choose with quarterbacks because – when a quarterback is on his rookie contract, we say, well, I want to see what you look like without weapons. And then when they have less weapons, it's then weird. Then we say we want to see what it's like when you pay your quarterback, but now everybody has paid their quarterback. I just feel like we're constantly trying to thread this needle of when do you get credit for your success? I think Dak Prescott is a very good quarterback, but they can't run the football. How can you be successful as an NFL quarterback if your team can't run the ball? Like, not all of the problems on the offense are just based on how you are. How's your offensive line? I would say over the course of the last 5 years, my biggest opinion has changed. Now, Mahomes is shown to be a sidebar from this, but Mahomes is one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen. Man, the NFL is so situation-based. So we can say, well, I want to see what Brock Purdy looks like when he's not in Kyle Shanahan's system. I mean, is Kyle Shanahan getting fired anytime soon? Because he's
Right,
going to
right.
continue to be in Kyle Shanahan's system. So why do we now need him to go to Cleveland to prove to us that he's a good quarterback? He
It's
just thinks he's
ridiculous.
being a good quarterback on San Francisco. The whole
The
argument,
nitpicking's ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
he plays for Kyle Shanahan. He plays in that system. So what does it matter if he can go to Cleveland and
yeah,
or run
it
the
just
run and shoot or whatever the hell that people want to see him do?
yeah, we're constantly moving the goalposts for these quarterbacks. And I think one thing that's really important to note is, man, none of these quarterbacks under 30 have a Super Bowl yet except Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot of great young quarterbacks in this league. You know, Lamar Jackson's fantastic. Josh Allen is
Mhm.
fantastic. CJ Stroud. I think there's not that many active quarterbacks with rings aside from Patrick Mahomes. It's Russell Wilson and Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, like older quarterbacks, like at some point it is going to be interesting to see in the same way with Brady. Brady was not the only quarterback of his generation to win a championship. Peyton Manning won a championship. Ben
Mhm.
Roethlisberger won a championship. All Russell Wilson. All these other quarterbacks won rings. None of Patrick Mahomes' contemporaries have rings. Not a single one of them. That's not going to go on for the next decade. Eventually, the Chiefs lose the Super Bowl, or they don't get to the Super Bowl like we
Yeah.
saw a couple years ago, and other teams get to go. So I don't know if that's going to be this year. It does feel like if you're going to, I feel like we said this last year. If you're going to get Kansas City, this does feel like the season to get them with how the injury bug has bitten them. But again, last year the Chiefs were 17th in offense and points scored, and they still found a way to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's what gets to me. It felt like it was the Niners' year last year, and it was the year to knock off the Chiefs last year, and the Ravens couldn't do it, and the Bills couldn't do it, and then the Niners couldn't do it. They still find a way to win, and it's kind of reminds me in a way of the Patriots, because a lot of the reasons the Patriots were so successful is you had Brady and Belichick, right? You had the best quarterback and the best coach, and he was a defensive coach. And when you marry those two, they're so hard to beat. And with Kansas City, Reed is probably the best coach in the league, I would say. And then you have Spagnuolo, who's probably the best defensive coordinator in the league or close to it. And then you have the best coach, or I'm sorry, the best quarterback. So they have this like perfect storm situation where even when the offense is down, the defense can pick up the slack like they're doing right now. So it's an amazing time to be a Chiefs fan or follow the Chiefs. I can imagine. I mean, we're sick of it, but for you guys, it's got to be good. So.
Yeah, I think this is just every time of every sport that we watch, maybe just not baseball right now, because baseball feels maybe more wide open than it's been.
Mhm.
There are teams that sort of plant their flag and let you know that we were here. That's happened in football for every football cycle that has happened. In the 70s, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the 80s, it was you guys in San Francisco. In the 90s, it was the Cowboys. The 2000s, the Patriots. 2010s was the New England Patriots. Like, this is just the Chiefs' time. I don't know how long that time will be. Maybe it's 2 more years. Maybe it's 6 more years. Maybe it's 12 more years. I don't know. But it has clearly been noted this is the Chiefs' time in history, and you just got to wait it out. And eventually it ends, and then another team like Kansas City pops up. We would have never guessed, right when the Patriots dynasty ends, another dynasty will just take over, like almost instantly. I mean, that's not what's happened in the NBA. Golden State dynasty end, and then, hey, Denver got a ring, and now Boston
It takes
got
a
a
little
ring.
bit.
Yeah, now we'll see if another team, we'll see if Boston can go back to back. But, the fact that the NFL has been controlled by basically 2 quarterbacks since the turn of the century is it's mind blowing. I mean, either Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady have been in 8 of the last 10 Super Bowls. The NFL's selling point is parity. Its selling point is anybody can win. No, anybody cannot win. If you don't have Mahomes or you don't have Tom Brady, the history suggests you are not going to the Super Bowl.
This game coming up, I'm always worried about Kelsey, even though he's getting older and it kind of seems like he's on a pitch count these days. I'm going to worry about him. But one player I have my eye on their offense is Xavier Worthy, because I feel like they've been slow playing him a little bit. He had the really good week 1 where he had the end around touchdown and he looked like they were going to find ways to get him the ball. And it's been a little bit of a dead period for him. But now after the bye, we know how good Andy Reid is after buys. I feel like maybe they're going to incorporate him in a little bit more. Do you see him being a factor this week? Or do you think as the season goes on, maybe later in the year, they'll get him more involved?
I'm not trying to sidestep the question. I think it's really hard to know with Xavier Worthy. If you look at the stats, I mean, he's basically where Rashee Rice was at this point last year, so around 150 yards. Now we know the second half of the season, Rice just really exploded in the last 8 games for this team. So I'm not really sure. It feels a little boom or bust to me with Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy could have 2 catches for 102 yards in this game. he could have 2 catches for 12 yards in this game. Like, both are very realistic possibilities. I would be surprised if Juju plays if he has 12 yards, just because of the volume I think he could get and the opportunities that I think he's going to get in the offense. But as I said with Xavier Worthy could have one big over the play touchdown where it's one catch for 80 yards and he just breaks your back in that way. Or he could get an end around and takes it to the house. It's been real boom or bust so far with his usage. I mean, in his first game, he touched the ball 3 times and scored twice. Against the Chargers, they had a long pass play down the middle of the field. He catches it. Other than that, he hasn't really made a whole lot of dynamic plays, but it's crazy to say other than when he scored, he hasn't done anything.
Right. Their defense is I mean, really amazing to me. And when you look at them statistically, they're so good. They don't give up points. They're tough against the run. We all know Chris Jones. I mean, Niners fans certainly do. He's probably cost us 2 Super Bowls in a lot of ways. But who are some other guys on this defense that have really stepped up other than Jones that for the Niners fans to keep an eye on or watch out for?
I mean, Trent McDuffie would be a household name in the NFL if he had better interception numbers. You kind of know how corner is. You kind of have to get interceptions to kind of be labeled as that guy, to kind of have that belt as being the best young corner in the league. Sauce Gardner is incredible. Patrick Surtain II is incredible. I think that Trent McDuffie is in that conversation, but again, the interception numbers aren't there. Jalen Watson has played really well. The Chiefs have done a really good job. You guys know Charvarius Ward very well. You know, he had that title at one point. He then passed it to L'Jarius Sneed, who now passed it to Jalen Watson. So they've done a really good job with either undrafted or mid-round corners and turning them into really productive players and starting that process over. I think they have one of the best secondaries in the National Football League. And another name to keep a hold of, opposite of Chris Jones, is George Karlaftis. I think George Karlaftis has a lot of Max Crosby energy. I don't think his ceiling is as high as Max Crosby. I think Max Crosby is one of the 5 best pass rushers in the league. I don't think that's what Karlaftis is, but you know, he's a guy that if you sleep a little bit, he can have 1.5 sacks in these games to kind of turn things around. But I mean, you mentioned it. Chris Jones is playing like the best defensive tackle in football. He's one of the best defensive linemen in football. I mean, I think right now he is their best player. That's no disrespect to Patrick Mahomes. We're just saying how guys are playing today, not their accolades, not what they've done over the course of their career. I think that Chris Jones is playing better than anybody on their team right now. He has had some stretches where he has just been unblockable at times and been dominant. Excuse me. And everything they do defensively really stems off the fact of they do a really good job of limiting stars. I mean, look at the running backs against them. Like, I'm not really confident in San Francisco's ability to run the ball on Kansas City in this matchup because of how they've done. And they've done a really good job against number 1 wide receivers. I mean, they've gone up against Zay Flowers. They've gone up against Drake London. They've gone up against Jamar Chase. They've gone up against Quentin Johnston. And just none of those guys have had more than 75 yards against Kansas City.
Well, a point I'm going to make later in the show, when you look at the Super Bowl and the Niners stars, because I think that's the key to this game. Niners stars didn't do anything in the Super Bowl. I mean, Kittle had 4 yards. Debo had 33 yards. Ayuk had 49 yards, I think it was. So they didn't step up. So I think those guys really need to do that in this game. And you mentioned Chris Jones. Yeah, we know Mahomes. Chris Jones probably made the 2 plays that won those Super Bowls for the Chiefs, with the batted down pass in 2019, and then obviously the pressure that caused Purdy to throw the ball to Jennings, the incomplete pass there, and the Niners settle for a field goal for whatever reason. But yeah, he's a guy like you do not want to see. He's amazing.
Really
this is a huge game.
Really quick, I just want to add this in here. One of the Kansas City local debates is who should have won MVP in the first Super Bowl. Chris Jones is a name that gets thrown out a lot, and Damian Williams is a name. I understand why Mahomes won it. I certainly get why Mahomes won it. Jet chip wasp, that catch in the middle of the field. They don't win the Super Bowl without Patrick Mahomes, of course. But I'm with you. Chris Jones was the best player on the field that day. Mahomes did not play well for the first 52 minutes of the game, and it just magically was incredible at the end of the game. And then Damian Williams has, the infamous call, or I guess the famous call, not infamous, the famous call from Mitch Holtis, the run to immortality. Damian Williams, a long run down the sideline. So that's kind of the, hey, maybe Mahomes shouldn't have got MVP in the first one. Now, the last 2, I think it's been very obvious that he should have won MVP, but that first one, that's kind of one of those debates of who should have won MVP.
So how do you guys view this game in Kansas City? Obviously, for the Niners and Niners fans, it's huge, and this is a hump that this team has to get over. It's not the Super Bowl. It's not going to make up for that, but they have to beat this team at some point to, I think, springboard them forward, and then if they do see them again in the Super Bowl. How do you guys view this? Is this a rivalry, or is it just kind of like one of those things for you where you're like, oh, it's the Niners, and we're more than That's
Yeah,
what's going to happen.
honestly, the conversation this week has been much more about who they should go get at wide receiver. I mean, we didn't start talking about the Niners until Thursday. Like, we did not talk about the Niners the first 3 days of the week. It was a lot of Amari Cooper on Tuesday because, I wanted them to go get Amari Cooper, and he went to
Love
Buffalo.
that pickup for Buffalo. Love it.
Devontae Adams got traded. So it's been a lot of that. This is no shade towards San Francisco because I think they've been the second best team in the league over the last 5 years. There is not a team that Kansas City Chiefs fans think about because they're in the NFC. Let's say San Francisco wins this game. It changes nothing for Kansas City.
Right.
Kansas City has already beaten Baltimore. They have Buffalo on their schedule and Houston on their schedule. You got to win those games. If you win those games, you have the necessary tiebreakers, and you are going to be the 1 seed in the AFC postseason. So, the Chiefs are not going undefeated. They're going to lose a handful of times over the course of the year. I said this on my show today. If I handed you the schedule and I told you what the Chiefs' record was going to be, they're going to go 13-4. And I said, circle the 4 losses. I think you circle this loss. Now, I'm going to pick them to win this game, and I'll tell you why I'm going to pick them to win. But I think that this game doesn't register with Chiefs fans, because they've won the 2 Super Bowls. You guys haven't won the Super Bowls. I also think it just registers because, week 1 was against Baltimore. Week 2 was against Cincinnati and the back and forth between Cincinnati. They got Buffalo later. They have a Black Friday game in Kansas City. They play on Christmas on Netflix against the Steelers. So this game probably isn't one of the 5 biggest games that Chiefs fans have circled. And that's not any disrespect towards San Francisco. It is just when you were the Super Bowl champions, you just have big games. It feels like once every 2-3 weeks in the league.
So why do you think the Chiefs are going to win?
I'm picking the Chiefs for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I think the Chiefs can make San Francisco one-dimensional. They've done that to basically everybody. And I think Purdy's somebody that kind of needs that run game. No McCaffrey. I don't know if Jordan Mason's going to play in this. I don't know if – I can't pronounce his last name. Isaac Gar. How do you pronounce the gentleman's last name?
Garendo?
Yeah, Garendo. Yeah, okay. I knew it was something. I didn't want to mess it up. I didn't want to butcher his name. That guy is not running the ball against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they stopped Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara. Garendo is not running the ball against Kansas City.
Yeah, there's a huge drop-off after Mason.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if they can win that. Andy Reid, 21-4 coming off a bye. Patrick Mahomes as an underdog, 10-3 straight up as a dog. So, if you're telling me in this, the Chiefs have had 2 weeks to prepare for San Francisco, and you're going to give me Mahomes as a dog, to me, that's the right side to be on. So I've already placed my bet on this. I have flipped the line. I'm taking the Chiefs -2.5 and the under. This just doesn't feel like a high-scoring game to me. The over-under right now is 47.5. This feels like 23-20 to me. This feels like 21-17. Number one, I don't trust Kansas City's offense enough to score 27 points with the pieces that they have. I also don't think that San Francisco scores 24 or more points with Kansas City's defense and how banged up they are right now. So that's how I did it. I got it like 3-1 odds. I got Kansas City -2.5, and I have the under 47.5.
Carrington, appreciate the time, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you for having me on. Thank you.